Hi, I'm Jess Crombie. I'm an academic in narrative ethics, and this is a video in the Science of Storytelling series. So today's idea is the empathy altruism hypothesis. This was a theory developed by social psychologist Daniel Batson way back in 1987. And before I get into explaining it, the reason this is relevant to a series on the science of storytelling is because this hypothesis has guided the telling of stories for the purposes of advocacy action by people who might not know about this theory. So I thought it might be useful for people like you and me who tell stories for change to find out about this core material which is guiding our actions even if we might not realise it. The empathy altruism hypothesis, it's a bit of a mouthful, states that an empathic concern produces altruistic motivation. In other words, if we care, we act. And the key to moving people towards genuinely altruistic behaviour, according to Batson, is empathic concern, which he describes as being other-orientated. And what that means is that you feel for the other, even if you do not feel as the other feels. So emotions that might be described as other-orientated might be compassion or pity or sympathy. Batson's also clear that his hypothesis relies not on empathic emotions such as joy at another's good fortune. He is focused specifically on the empathy felt when another person is perceived to be in need. He states that without this perception, there's no impetus for change. So if someone's having a lovely time, you can feel empathically happy for them, but you're not motivated to take any actions on their behalf. So far, so simple. But where this theory gets more interesting and more complicated is when he starts to explain the idea of motivation. So what Batson seeks to explain is the difference initially between altruism and egoism. He identifies each of these as a motivational state, but the difference is that one is interested in and focused on helping an other without receiving a reward for oneself, and the other is helping someone, an other, to also gain some kind of reward for yourself. So you could say, who cares as long as someone's being helped? Why does motivation matter? Well, it's because one motivation, egoistic, is short-termist. It's about seeking an immediate reward for a small or a large action that we've taken to help a person or a group of people that we're interacting with. So that might be personal image or a thank you, or maybe even avoiding punishment. While the other, altruistic, is for the long term because it means seeking no reward for taking many or some invisible actions that benefit others even when we do not benefit ourselves at all. And Batson argues that the long-term motivation is what we need to have in order to enact a properly functioning society. We can't be rewarded for our good acts all the time, and we shouldn't expect to be. For me, this is where the theory becomes very interesting when we're talking about storytelling, because when we think about, let's say, humanitarian examples, the types of stories we tell are designed to elicit this feeling of other-orientated empathic concern. But what we, including me, as a humanitarian storyteller, often don't think about as much is the long-term effect of the stories that we're telling on the society in which we live. And I mean this at both a local and a global level. If we take into account Batson's theory, this means that we have been focused on eliciting an egoistic motivated response rather than an altruistic motivated response. And while that may raise a lot of money, it may also be contributing to why we are now in a position of trust deficit and falling audience engagement, because we haven't influenced people to think long-term for others rather than short-term for themselves as well as others. So for all of us who are using storytelling to try and evoke an empathetic response, I think it's really important for us to understand the history of this theory so we recognise the differences in empathetic responses. I certainly won't be advocating for only attempting to motivate altruistic empathy. I think egoistic motivation has its real benefits, but a bit more focus on eliciting and encouraging both short and long-term motivations from our audiences could be helpful. Thanks very much and see you again soon. Bye.